Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. Millions of Jews across the world are marking Holocaust Remembrance Day, with 6 million Jewish people killed in the genocide during World War II, many of them in gas chambers in Nazi death camps. In Israel, a 2-minute siren sounded out this morning, bringing the entire population to a standstill in collective remembrance. After that, a wreath-laying ceremony at the foot of the 6 torches was held at the Yad Vashem Memorial in Jerusalem. Places of entertainment are closed and memorial ceremonies are being held throughout the country. Earlier today, Israeli President Reuven Rivlin spoke. Let's take a listen.
Every year on Holocaust Memorial Day, we stand and read the names of the victims. Every person has a name. There are names. There are many names, which will never be known, despite the unceasing efforts to find them. My wife's relatives, children, babies, will remain nameless. There is no one who knows their names. They were here, and now they are not. May their memory be blessed.
Let's now go to our correspondent Daniel Semach, who is standing by. Daniel, you're in an Israeli community most identified with the Holocaust, Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, which was founded by Holocaust survivors. So tell me, how is the Holocaust Remembrance Day marked in that specific community today?
Well, Sarah, each year they actually close the Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day here in this Israeli border community. As you said, this community is called Yad Mordechai. It's named after what is often known as a hero of the Holocaust, Mordechai Anilevich. And if you actually can make it out there, slightly above me, there's a large statue of him standing, overlooking this entire community. In this statue, he's actually holding a grenade, something that shows here strength, perseverance in light of this tragedy. So each year we see this ceremony happening, marking the end of Holocaust Remembrance Day. So even with the tragedy that transpired, also showing that life continues here in a place that's obviously very close to the Gaza border, a place that's very familiar with the violence that still goes on to this very day, but something that they hold to be very dear is their history, as you said, being Holocaust survivors from Poland.
And Daniel, you've been there throughout the day speaking to people. So tell me, what is the feeling on the ground in relation to the Holocaust and the Jewish country? And tell me, how are the two tying up?
Well, Sarah, it's interesting. We actually heard from several different people throughout this ceremony. The first was the Israeli President, Reuven Rivlin. We heard that soundbite of him earlier. But we also heard from the head of the Blue and White Party, Benny Gantz, who is the son of Holocaust survivors, who grew up in an Israeli community, an Israeli kibbutz. He spoke about the importance of maintaining and showing strength, but also maintaining the importance of moral values and being ethical. And that really also goes into play when we're talking about the way the Israeli military is employing and the Israeli military operates. He spoke about that specifically regarding Gaza. So today we still understand that there are lessons to be learned from this tragedy, but also that Israel has become a different type of state, that the Jewish people here have actually created their own military. So obviously we see both sides of that, the difficult past, but also maybe a more promising future.
Okay, Daniel Semach there. Really appreciate the update. Thank you. Now, Holocaust Remembrance Day is observed in Israel and around the world. This year, more than 10,000 people from 40 countries and dozens of dignitaries are taking part in the 31st Annual International March of the Living, the 3-kilometre march from Auschwitz to Birkenau concentration camps to pay tribute to the victims of the Holocaust. US Ambassador to Israel David Friedman also addressing those marching.
There's an expression in Hebrew, ein milim. There are no words. There are no words. I have no words. I have no words to capture the pain, the anger, the sadness, the horror that I feel now at this solemn site. And even if I had the words, they would be drowned out by the shrieks, the cries, the shouts, the agony of the victims in this death camp that have never been silenced and that are amplified right now.
And for more, let's now go to our Europe correspondent, Polina Garatz, who is standing by in Auschwitz. Polina, thank you so much. We know that more than 10,000 people have been marching there today, and you've been there throughout the day. Give me a little bit more about what was happening there.
Well, obviously, this was a very emotional day, a mix of sadness, but also of triumph, as dozens of survivors also took part in the march. Some of them were sitting right where the delegations left Auschwitz I, sitting right next to the infamous Arbeit macht frei, work shall set you free sign, bidding farewell to all the participants of the delegations, wishing them good luck on their journey. Of course, a short journey when it comes to distance, only 2 miles, 3 kilometers, but a very difficult one emotionally. And this was a very interesting exchange between the survivors and young people that approached them, shook their hand, asked a few questions. One of the survivors was holding a sign that said, "Continue my revenge." And he spoke to some of the young students participating in the march and said, "You are my revenge. You need to continue what I have started," meaning the project of commemoration. And as we're marching here at a time of rising anti-Semitism all around the world, this carries even more significance.
And Polina, let's talk now about that rise of anti-Semitism, which we, of course, have been reporting on. Tell me, what kind of reactions are you hearing to that there?
Well, it was actually very interesting to see the march adopt a special focus this year. So one aspect that was highlighted was really the memory of the Greek Jewry that received special mention during the ceremony earlier today. But another aspect that was also worth mentioning is the focus on young leadership. Yesterday, we saw 20 representatives of about 150 general conference that focused on how to combat modern anti-Semitism. And we heard both representatives of the UK Jewry, but also, for example, somebody representing Pittsburgh, which of course experienced an attack. They're talking about what can we do. And one of the things that are now being done is a social media campaign with the hashtag Say No to Anti-Semitism. This is meant, of course, to bring awareness to the fact that the fight against anti-Semitism is something that cannot be restricted only to members of the Jewish faith, but this is a global task, something that any person living in any country can participate currently by sharing the hashtag.
Okay, Polina Garatz, thank you so much for that update. Earlier today, I spoke with the president of the Jewish National Fund, Dr. Sol Lisbron, who's speaking out following last weekend's deadly attack on the synagogue in San Diego. Let's take a listen.
What we can do is stay strong and stay vigilant and not retreat. If we retreat, they win. So it's very similar to your border communities on the Gaza Strip, the Gaza envelope, like Chalutza, where they stay strong and they stay vigilant and they grow. And the community grows to show their resilience. And that's what we're going to do. And planting this forest, the trees will grow and they will thrive, just like these Jewish communities that have been hurt will grow and thrive.
And we're going out for a short break, but when we come back, we'll take a look at a viral Instagram campaign looking at the Holocaust. All of that and more when we come back. Stay with us.
unflinching, outspoken, and to the point. The most complete coverage of the day's events. Weeknights, watch Crossroads for analysis, interviews, and reporting that connects us to the Middle East and the world. Watch Crossroads, 6 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
It's ancient land, a holy land, and it's full of history. Holy Land Uncovered is a weekly magazine that examines the faith, the religion, the history of the land that's holy to 3 religions, taking you to places you might not otherwise see. Let Holy Land Uncovered take you there.
Watch Holy Land Uncovered, only on I-24 News.
Lesbos, Greece's 3rd largest island, the picture of tranquility. Also epicenter to a global migration crisis and home to Europe's biggest refugee camp. Thousands have journeyed here escaping war, famine, poverty, and terror. Join I-24 News' Emily Rose for rare inside access, hearing from those who landed on these shores and those determining their future, plus the ones trying to make a difference.
Have a seat down.
Lesbos, Island of Dreams, Island of Despair, all this week only on I-24 News.
41 nations, 41 acts, and 3 days of fierce competition. This May, thousands of music fans from around the globe will descend on Tel Aviv for the 64th annual Eurovision contest, with Israel hosting for the 3rd time in 6 decades. Join I-24 News for complete live coverage inside the shows, the celebration, and the drama.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, what if a girl in the Holocaust had Instagram? A new form of commemorating the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust wants to answer this question. Eva's Stories takes the life of a 13-year-old girl from Hungary who was murdered in 1944 in Auschwitz and presents it as an Instagram story. Here's more.
Hi, my name's Eva. Welcome to my page.
Eva Stories, the ambitious and unusual Instagram project designed to raise awareness of the Holocaust, is making serious waves both in Israel and around the world. With more than 120 million views in less than 24 hours, the project sheds light on the tale of one young girl in Hungary in 1944, affecting both adults and children alike.
A lot of kids in my class said that they were really interested and wanted to learn more, especially since some of their family members, who were Holocaust survivors, passed away, and they never got the chance to ask them questions.
In 70 short episodes, a British actress playing Eva takes followers on her Holocaust journey, based on events storied in a diary written by a girl of the same name.
We really need to find a way to express what happened in the Holocaust in a very relatable, strong, and in-your-face kind of way. And so we thought that Instagram could be a great tool to do this.
Celebrities, media outlets, and political figures have all promoted the project, which has made it all the way to the White House's Instagram page.
From today, I must document everything that happens to us.
But the main aim of this ambitious project, several $1 million in the making, is to make the Holocaust more accessible to teenagers and young adults.
The kids don't connect as much with plays and other activities about the Holocaust. The story is very short, and kids are on Instagram most of the time, so it's a very good way of showing the Holocaust to them.
That goal has been achieved, with data showing 50% of Eva Stories' views were from people aged 13 to 30. The unusual use of the medium caught many by surprise. But criticism has emerged over the use of the selfie culture and of its visual language, claiming selfies at the gates of Auschwitz will be next. Some youngsters also think Instagram is not the place to tell a Holocaust story.
I don't like the idea so much. To do it on a social media platform which is more about fun and laughs, I think it's inappropriate.
And while the controversy may remain, the exposure of Eva's personal story and that of 6 million Jews who perished during the Holocaust is a remarkable feat even in the face of the tragic circumstances. Alec Pollard, I-24 News.
Colliding interests, Jerusalem's foreign policy vis-a-vis right-wing European administration is becoming an increasingly contentious topic in Israel, and this year's Holocaust Remembrance Day is putting the limelight on this moral debate, with the Israeli president saying loud and clear some of those administrations should never become Israel's allies. I24 News diplomatic correspondent Ellie Hockenberg has more.
Compromising the past for the future?
It is important to clarify, we are not in the 1930s. We do not stand on the brink of a second Holocaust or anything approaching it. But it is impossible to ignore the new old anti-Semitism that has returned. From the right to the extreme left, anti-Semitism permeates the heart of the European leadership.
Keeping with his subtle yet clear way of delivering messages in his Holocaust Remembrance Day speech, Israel's President Reuven Rivlin sent out a very clear policy warning.
Not every European right-wing party that believes in maintaining borders is anti-Semitic and racist. However, political forces whose language is that are anti-Semitic and racist. They must not be our allies.
And indeed, it appears that Israel's current diplomatic goals and challenges often test new political borders.
I want to balance the EU's not-so-friendly attitude toward the State of Israel in order to achieve a more fair and genuine partnership for Israel. I do this through contacts with blocks of countries within the EU, Central Europe and Eastern Europe.
I've advised caution in establishing some of these relationships, particularly with parties and governments that have had a fascist or Nazi past. I've asked the question, to what degree are we willing to sacrifice our collective memory for possible benefits in the present or in the future? And I think that we should examine every case individually on its own merits.
And those merits, secondary to the need for European leadership to better protect its Jewish citizens.
It's not a question of balance, it's a question of security. We do not have to put our relations with Europe on a level where, in order to protect these ties, we will not say there is anti-Semitism in these countries. No, anti-Semitism exists.
As the challenges of the Jewish people in diaspora appear to be building, the Jewish state is engaged in a constant debate of how to balance the painful collective memory of the past while being able to look ahead into a brighter, stronger future.
This week is a complicated one here in Israel. It starts with Holocaust Remembrance Day, ending in a celebration of Israel's independence. Some of the heroes who fought Israel's wars came from the darkest of places to rise from the ashes to the skies. Israel takes much pride in the country's powerful air force and the pilots, many of whom survived the horrors of the Holocaust. More in the next report.
From its birth until today, the Israel Air Force, now flying some of the most advanced jets in the world, has been an elite unit. The best to the Air Force, the saying went. But what is not generally known is that Holocaust survivors helped make the IAF what it is. At one stage, nearly half of all Air Force flight crews were Holocaust refugees, serving alongside native-born Israelis.
In 56, middle 56, 1956, there were in the Israeli Air Force around 300 air crews. Out of them, 142 children, Holocaust survivors, who became pilots and navigators.
Shaya Kharsit flew as an Air Force navigator. For a child who was born in Poland and fled all the way to an orphanage in Kazakhstan, where he encountered bitter hunger and cold, it's clear that a strong and independent Jewish state is the difference between life and death.
I knew for me what the country, the Israel, means for me. Completely different meaning than for those who were born in this country. I know what was there, and I know what is here, how I feel here.
Did the childhood traumas of the Holocaust, the memories of the helplessness, prompt Shaya and the other survivors to become pilots and navigators in the newly formed Air Force? For Shaya, the answer is unequivocal.
For us, things that were, let's call it difficult or very, very ambitious, were actually easy.
Now he and some friends have set up an association to raise awareness of those who survived the darkest period of the Jewish people and grew up to be the defenders of the Jewish state.
The heritage of From Rebirth to the Skies is telling the story of those 142 children Holocaust survivors that became pilots or navigators of the Israeli Air Force, and they were actually the main foundation and the main basis of the Israeli Air Force.
Many of those children, born mostly in the 1930s, are no longer with us, but the memory of these men will remain forever.
A delegation of senior Hamas and Islamic Jihad officials are said to be travelling to Cairo just 2 hours after rockets were launched into southern Israel prompted red alert sirens. Al Mayadeen News is reporting that the Palestinian representatives were summoned there. They were meeting with an Egyptian delegation seeking to ease tensions and prevent further escalation. Meanwhile, the leader of Islamic Jihad has just released this video threatening to launch strikes against major cities in Israel if the Jewish state keeps carrying out targeted attacks against any of its members. Let's move now to Venezuela, where one woman has been shot dead. Dozens more are injured after clashes broke out between opposition supporters and pro-government forces in the capital of Caracas today. This latest incident comes as Venezuela political crisis worsens as opposition leader Juan Guaido, supported by the West, seeks to wrestle control of the country from President Nicolas Maduro, who's backed by Russia, China and the leaders of Venezuela's military and is refusing to cede power.
Soldiers, the time to fight has come, to give history and the world an example and show them that in Venezuela there is a national Bolivarian armed forces that is decisive, loyal, cohesive, and united like never before, to quash traitors of attempted coups who sell themselves for the dollars of Washington.
Drugs, money laundering, controversial flights and rumours of boots on the ground. As a political and humanitarian crisis in Venezuela continues to spiral, international interests in the oil-rich country are coming to the forefront. I24 News international correspondent Bianca Zanini spoke to one of the world's leading experts on the subject about how Iran and its proxy Hezbollah have decades-long ties reaching deep into Latin America and to the Venezuelan government.
The streets of Venezuela on fire this week again. And as the protests grow louder, so do the whispers of exactly how Iran and its proxy Hezbollah is supporting the Maduro regime.
People don't recognize that Hezbollah has active cells. The Iranians are impacting the people of Venezuela and throughout South America. We have an obligation to take down that risk for America.
Tehran and Caracas have decades of close relationships, and reports of Hezbollah activities on the ground are drawing the attention not only of the U.S., but also of international analysts.
The reports are out there. It's very hard to come by the evidence until now. But the fact of the matter is that Venezuela remains an important strategic asset for Iran. It gives Iran an entry point into the Western Hemisphere. Iran has set up, and Hezbollah have set up an infrastructure in that country for many years. And Iran is not about to let it go in the hands of a pro-American, pro-Western government.
Last month, Mahan Air, a private Iranian airline accused by many Western countries of transporting military equipment to war zones, reportedly launched a direct flight to Venezuela.
Iran, through that kind of air bridge, can prop up the Maduro regime with money, with weapons, with fighters, with any kind of assistance that the beleaguered Maduro regime needs to fend off the pressure from the opposition.
And the techniques used by Maduro to suppress demonstrators have been described as a replica of the tactics used by the Iranian regime in 2009 to quash protests there.
Hezbollah presence in Venezuela has traditionally been facilitating trade-based money laundering operations linked to the drug traffic.
Having troops on the ground could jeopardize that.
If the Guaido uprising succeeds and the Iranians, like the Cubans, are at the forefront of propping up Maduro, it will be a priority to dislodge them. Whereas if the Iranians are not to be seen anywhere, I promise you the Guaido transitional government will have other priorities to focus on.
Whether or not Venezuela has a Hezbollah military presence being used for training remains to be seen. But the complex infrastructure the Iranians have set up in the country, their gateway to the Americas, seem to still be very much in place and not likely to be given up easily. Bianca Zanini, I-24 News.
Let's now go back across the Atlantic, where the US military is admitting that 2018 saw a major spike in sexual assaults despite years of efforts to address the problem. Figures released today show that more than 20,000 instances of unwanted sexual contact occurred in 2018, up from close to 1,500 in 2016, which is the last time a survey was conducted. It also notes that at least a third of the cases involved alcohol, and victims were mostly female recruits aged between 17 to 24 years old. Acting Defence Secretary Patrick Shanahan is vowing to correct the problem. And that is all we have time for. Thanks for watching.